Paul, welcome to the Virtual CMO Podcast. So glad you could join us today.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, great to be on the show. Really excited to be here.
So I've got to ask you, I read a little bit in your biography that you've got singing in your background and happen to have an affinity for 50s rock and rollers. What got you into singing and what attracted you to 50s rock and roll?
Yeah, to be fair, so my wife's family, they're all massively into 50s. So we started going to some like 50s rock and roll kind of do's, and then I realized that suited my voice as well and my personality with the kind of over the top excitement. So got into singing, and then ended up doing wedding singing, and that kind of transitioned to get me into marketing. As a lot of people seem to, it's kind of weird the amount of people that are in marketing that came from a music background, which is really strange. You know, there's a lot of the bigger names in that space, which is really cool. So yeah, I just kind of transitioned, and I was like, actually, I like the marketing even more than the music.
So the marketing, was it related to the music? Were you trying to market your singing abilities and or your position as a wedding singer? How did that work? What was the transition?
Yeah, we actually created an info product at the time, and we create this thing called a dream wedding secrets box, because it's like, well, that'd be great. You know, that's what brides want. They want a dream wedding. So, and then obviously it had a plug for my stuff in there as well. We started creating those. We sold like 250 of them, which was awesome. Looking back now, I realized it was a self-liquidating offer, and I could have literally just scaled the hell out of it, but I didn't, because I was like, oh, it's not making money. So then that transitioned into this other business completely, which was like, okay, well, what the brides really want, and they wanted bridesmaids dresses at a reasonable price. So we ended up, we built a group of 3,500 brides, asked them what they wanted. They told us it was that, and then we sold over 1,000 dresses in a few months, and it went a little bit crazy until we didn't calculate our return policy right. And then in the space of 2 months, we had £24,000 come back in 2 months, and nearly went bankrupt. So that was that was the moment, you know, when you go, you know, when they say that epiphany moment where I was, oh my God, like, what, like, I can't do this anymore, right? So it was like, but here was the problem. I couldn't actually stop spending. Because if I'd stopped spending altogether, then I wouldn't have had the cash flow to actually manage those returns coming in. So I knew these returns are coming back, and I'm still putting money in Facebook ads every month, but just less and less each month, going, I know this money's coming back. I know this is coming back. So I actually got like postmanophobia, which is also known as being scared of the postman. Every time I heard that, you know, the scanner, you know, when they send it, they said beep. Every time that happened, I knew another £300 had gone out my account, essentially.
So what were people doing? Getting married and then returning the stuff?
So because and this is a thing to learn on return policies, if nothing else, is so we had a 3-month return policy. We're just like, look, you can return it for any reason, because we wanted to compete with the big boys. And so we did that. And then after like 2 months, someone would return it and just go, yeah, I decided I want something else instead. Because here's the thing as well, with bridesmaids dresses, there's an advantage to it, right? The first advantage is you only have to sell to one person, and then you've sold 8, 5, 6, 7, 8 copies of it. So you're like, great, sold to one person, made £400, £500. However, the negative to that is when one bridesmaid doesn't like it out of the 8, they return all of them. So yeah, then I got to the stage where I was like, okay, look, we can't do this anymore. So I did this graph, and anyone who's ever at a crossroad in their business or their life or whatever, well, I highly suggest to do this. I put a line down the middle, and I put what I enjoy, what I don't enjoy. And then I put a line across the horizontal that says what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. Right? Or to take it more extremes, like what I love and what I hate, and what I'm terrible at and what I'm amazing at. What am I a rock star at? Yep. Right? And then what I did is plotted everything that I'd ever done in business. So from accounting to marketing to automations to managing people, everything. So I plotted it all on there. And then the one thing that was at the top was this And at the time, this one thing was Messenger, right? So that was a start point of what then became C-COM, where then I was like, Facebook Messenger, yeah, that's one thing. That ManyChat or whatever, that's just a platform. And then I realized actually, like, it's not just ManyChat, it's this whole conversational experience. So then I started going, well, what about SMS? What about voicemail? What about personalized video messaging? Like, how can we reach these people in like every different platform to create this like amazing customer experience? So that's like kind of how C-COM was born, which is all about conversational commerce.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a great lead into my next question, which is really what encompasses conversational commerce. There's a lot to it, right? It's not just chatbots and AI. There's a lot to it. Explain what the term means.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is we're hiring a lot more staff at the moment, and this is sometimes the hardest thing to explain. And what we've actually done is we've created so we use Monday for project management, and we've got a board on there. And I've actually got patterns of Paul's brain as a board, so they can understand the creative side behind what all that encompasses. So yes, there's a lot of tools. Okay, so like I said, like Messenger, SMS, voicemail, personalized video messaging, audio messages, all that kind of stuff. But it's about understanding from a natural standpoint. If you were to have a conversation with someone, how would you speak? Don't speak to someone like you're a robot. Speak to them like they're a human. So, for example, when you're putting phrasing in SMS or Messenger and stuff, then like my punctuation isn't great, right? And here's the thing, that's kind of intentional a lot of the time, because when you do it like that, then people feel it's more human because it's got human errors, right? So when we did a few things with local businesses a while back, and it depends on you've got to understand the psychology behind the person who's buying, right? So if you're selling to other marketers, you're not gonna have this same kind of conversation as you would have with someone who's having a new kitchen fitted, right?
Makes sense.
So if you're having that kind of conversation with someone who's having a new kitchen fitted, you might type something wrong on purpose, put a delay and say, oh, sorry, I meant to say this. And then they're like, wow, this feels so human, such a human experience. And it's not about deceiving someone. It's about just creating something that feels more human. So we create a 80% human-like experience and then a 20% human experience. Because what tends to happen, you get a lot of businesses where they start to grow, they start to scale. They've been doing all this human kind of touch points and everything, reaching out to people, going, oh, let's have this conversation. And then they realize they can't do that at scale. It's just physically not possible. If you're running $1 million a year business or $10 million a year business, you can't personalize everything from a human perspective. So what we look at is using the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the results come from 20% of the actions. So we go, right, what's that 80% that we can automate to create that top 20% of the action? So then we look at automating the human experience around that.
So what kind of businesses do you see are having the most success implementing these tools? Is there a certain category? Is it mostly for sales? Is it a combination of sales and service? Where are people finding the most success?
Yeah, so where our focus is, and we kind of stumbled on this and then ran with it, is webinars. It's working fantastically well for webinars. We just had a client go from $31,000 a month to $243,000 in 12 weeks, just because of and that's per month as well. So it means you can scale a lot more rapidly, and it meant that the systems didn't break at scale because we've got this process in there. And then we've got this automated follow-up process as well. So the good thing about it as well is we make a lot of assumptions in marketing, right? We go, oh, this is why this isn't working. You're like, okay, have you asked? Asked who? The customer? No, but this is why it's not working. Like, how do you know? Like, what data have you got to support that? So then we'll look at the data and we'll do things like just find out what went wrong. Say, hey, what went wrong? And then we'll pull that information into Google Sheet, and then we'll use our own tools to analyze that data to find out like the 5 top keywords of why people are not buying, because then we can fix it. So it's a combination of this conversational process, but then understanding that, like, meeting the customer where they're at and then taking them over the line.
I think the webinar example is great because it's well known in marketing that when people commit to something, especially if it's free, it's not really much of a commitment, right? They put it on their calendar. If they have time, if they're not doing anything else, maybe they'll show up, maybe they won't, but it's not much of a commitment. That's why a lot of event producers charge a fee, even though it's being subsidized by sponsors or vendors or whatnot. They still charge it because it's a commitment. That means people are going to get on a plane and they're going to show up. So talk a little bit about the methodology that you use around webinars, which makes the difference, which helps it go from just being one of those things that's on somebody's calendar that may or may not be important to them to something that they feel drawn to.
Yeah, so you mentioned on a very, very key point, which we're always looking at, is micro commitments. So from the start to the end, like, how many micro commitments does it take to get someone to buy? And that might be a question of, you know, how many people does it take to change a light bulb? However, what we like to say, and I learned this from Jason Fladlin, is on average you should be aiming for 150 micro commitments on a webinar. And
Wow,
like,
that
people
seems like a lot.
it seems like a lot, right? But it doesn't mean it is, because what people look at when it becomes to a micro commitment, sometimes you're thinking too much in your head of what that commitment is. That's not always someone getting them to say directly, yes, I want this, right? That's the end commitment that you want. But the micro commitments are more of the nods, right? Those kind of things. So, for example, if you're on a webinar, at the end of a sentence, you're just saying the word right. Like, as I've just said right to you twice, and you're nodding backwards and forwards, nodding. Yeah. Makes sense. And asking those questions all the time, just going, so is that making sense to you, right? Can you see now how that would work for you? And then what we do, then we look at, like, how can we build that in across the whole conversational process? So by the time they get to the webinar, they're already being pre-framed for the sale. They're already taking a certain amount of micro commitments. So, for example, one of the things we'll do, if it's a live webinar, 1 hour before it starts, we use a confirmed event reminder to say, hey, just to let you know, the webinar's starting in an hour. What I want you to do is just let me know what your number one burning question is, because we're going to do a Q&A at the end of the webinar, right? And because you're doing that just before the webinar starts, then if they're going to commit to you at that point to go, I'm going to give you my question, what do they want? They want the outcome. So they're going to wait. They're going to go, right, I'm going to be on there now because I need to be on there to find out what the answer was to my question. And what that also does is it gives us great market research for free, right? So we know what people's number one problem is. And then we can use that in our marketing messaging, use the wording that they're using, and then adjust the headlines and everything accordingly.
So let's stick with this webinar example, because I want to understand this a little bit more about what this process looks like. So you have some sort of an offer that maybe you've made through email, or maybe it's something on your website that says there's an offer. Are you involving chatbots, follow-up emails, SMS as part of a complete flow in this process? So it's not just one thing, it's multiple things to sort of get that attendee to show up?
100%. Yeah, we use all the things I mentioned at the start. Like, we use all of those. And then, you know, for each client, it's a little bit different. You know, when we take on a new client, sometimes we'll go, okay, well, we're going to get them to register through Messenger. Sometimes that's the most effective way. Sometimes the most effective way is to get them to register on a landing page. And then on the thank you page, let's say it's a live web, and on the thank you page, we'll go, hey, go and download the free workbook. But the only way they can get that is going into Messenger. Now, at that point, we're looking at, so I always say remove all friction and then add it back in. So, and a lot of people, this is why you can't sometimes see where things are breaking, because there's too many friction points of going, well, it could be there, it could be there, it could be there. But if you remove as much friction as possible, so let's say you just go, right, landing page, email, no name, no phone number, no nothing, right? You do that. And then the next stage you go, well, what if we asked them for a phone number on the landing page? How does that affect conversion rates? If we change nothing else, just change that. And then you go, well, what if on the thank you page, what if we ask for their email on the landing page, But then on the thank you page, when we bring them into Messenger, then we ask for the phone number. When they've already made a commitment on the front to register for the webinar, are they more likely or less likely to give the phone number at that point? So it's always looking at every point of the process, like where is the best point to ask for that thing? And we're just starting to do some new things as well. We're launching this week where we've got this like auto optimization flow where it's got 16 different outcomes, right? So all the most popular questions that someone could ask. So like, what's included? Is this a scam? You know, the usual questions. So then the conversational flow will actually pop up with a call to action at the point where it's been optimized over the repeated data coming into that at the front to be able to go, okay, when someone's asked that question and that question and that question, at that point, they're usually ready to buy and then giving them the call to action. So it's about understanding where that person is in the buyer journey to take them to the next part of it.
It's interesting what you're talking about, the different points to collect information and friction versus reducing friction. Now, when you're using a tool like Facebook Messenger, there are some real advantages to that tool, right? Because there are things like a lead ad where you can pull information automatically without having to ask it. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, if you're running a, like, for example, like a lead magnet or a registration, it's also automatically going to pull their email from their Facebook account, and it's going to be able to pull the phone number as well. So there's a reduced amount of friction to get someone's phone number. We find on average we collect around 67% of phone numbers, which is, but what we also give them the option to skip, right? So just because they don't want to give the phone number, it doesn't mean you've lost that lead, because this is what the difference between a landing page, right? So if you go on a landing page and you say enter your email, enter your phone number. Now, you might say the phone number is optional. However, because it's there on that box and it's all as one, even if it's optional, they go, well, it's probably not optional. So I don't know what they want that for, so I'm going to leave. But if you've already collected someone's email on step 1, and then on step 2 gone, hey, by the way, we've also got this VIP list. If you want to put your phone number in, you can do. So you've got that flexibility. And here's a great thing as well. You can split test that flow in Messenger, right? So you could go, well, I'm going to run them. And this is what we've done a lot, which is like geeky stuff. But on the front, we'll go, right, let's collect the email, and then we'll do a split test. And we'll put like a couple of different words in that split test of the way that we ask for the phone number. So it might be like, what's your best phone number? And then the other one might be, please confirm your number. Right. And I can tell you most of the time, please confirm your number outweighs the other one, like, by a lot.
Interesting.
Because a confirmation is a small, again, back to micro commitments, a confirmation is a smaller commitment than a full ask.
Now, how does artificial intelligence fit into this? Because what you've described so far is a fairly heavily scripted flow, right? Where you're coming up with the questions and the responses, and the flow can take several different paths. So how does AI come into this, or is it not that present yet?
Yeah, so there's elements of it. You know, you can link with things like Dialogflow, which does like it will track the words that are actually being said, and then it'll do the response, kind of like it'll basically analyze. Let's say you put a full sentence, for example, let's say you're going to go and order a coffee, right? And you're in a coffee shop and it says order in Messenger. And you go in there and it would say, hi, I want a decaf latte with soya milk and 2 sugars, right? It won't recognize it hi. It will recognize the individual parameters. So it'll just be like latte, and that'll be like coffee make. And then it'll be like soya milk type, right? So it'll recognize those parameters and then pull that out to be able to put that in the right place where you need it. Now, with webinars, we don't use that much, but we using so many other different tools, and we're just starting to experiment with different things around the AI side of things as well. So it's about looking at the right use case, and I think in a business to consumer standpoint, especially from a customer service perspective, like that can be extremely powerful and really reduce the workload of the follow-up.
You mentioned tools, And there are a lot of tools that are out there right now. For example, I run my CRM on HubSpot. They have a chat bot that you can embed on a WordPress site. You've got Facebook Messenger, obviously, which you can put on your Facebook pages. You've got companies that are growing like crazy, like Intercom out there that have tools. When you look at the marketplace and see all these tools, do you see real advantages to one versus the other? Or is this really going to be a multi-pronged strategy where you're going to have to use one tool here on your website, one tool on Facebook? How do you see the marketplace there?
I'd say my favorite tool is Zapier, or Zapier, as I don't think anyone still knows which one it is.
Tomato, tomato, right?
Yeah. But yeah, by using that, you can link anything to anything. So we will try and cut that friction down by having to use less channels if we can. But at the end of the day, sometimes I believe that if you've got a tool that's a specialist in something, I would rather, because you find these companies that start off, they're absolutely fantastic at one thing, and then they go, well, we could do this, and we could do that, and that, and that, and that, and before you know it, their original product isn't as good as it used to be, and they've saturated what they've done so much that they can't really explain what they do anymore. So I would much rather have a company that goes, we are fantastic at this. That's all we do, over and over again. We will link that to anything and we'll make it amazing. And I'll go, okay, well, I'm going to use that over there, and I'm going to use this over here and this over here, and link those together to make the best possible customer experience.
Yeah, I completely agree, because otherwise it becomes tool overload. You need too much expertise on your team to manage all these tools. Each one works a little bit differently. It can become overwhelming. So in the webinar example that you talked about before, I'd love to kind of hear a case study about the performance of one of your clients that you work with sort of before you got involved and after you got involved, because I think this is so key. Marketing is expensive. It takes a lot of time. And if you're spending all this money to do outreach through something like a webinar, but you're not getting an audience, or you're getting a small audience, a smaller investment in growing that audience could pay exponentially, rewards back to you, because now you've got this many more people for roughly about the same effort.
Yeah. So going back to that with webinars, one of the lowest hanging fruit really is people don't have high show rates, right?
It's usually about a 50% drop off, right?
If not more. So we've had people that started with us at 17% show rate. And first webinar we did together, they had a record launch and did 44% show rate.
Wow.
Right. So you can have the best party in the world, but if no one shows up, it's not really going to be the best party in the world. You're just going to be eating sausage rolls in the corner on your own, and it's not going to be great. We've had other clients that and people ask as well, does this work at scale? Right. So, like I said, the client that we mentioned previously that went from 31,000 to 243. Now, obviously, to do 243,000, you're spending quite a lot in ads. You're reaching a lot of people, and you'd expect the show rates to drop quite a lot. So we actually increased them from, I think it's from 14% to 24%, which doesn't still sound that high. However, in their market, that's like crazy high, because their audience are the kind of people, like you say, who go, free, cool, I'll sign up for that. Oh yeah, I forgot about it now. So by taking that and increasing their webinar show rate by 86%, it meant that they could be profitable at scale.
Does the process really help too with webinar replays? So for those people who don't make it the day of the actual live event for the replay?
How much, I'm going to ask you a question, Eric. How much do you think it costs to get someone to click back to a replay through a sponsor message?
I honestly have no idea.
Have a guess. Have a guess.
Through an ad?
Yeah.
I don't know, 10, 15 US?
So 7 cents to get someone to click back.
7 cents?
Between 5 and 7 cents, usually.
Wow.
Which is so what you've always got to be looking as well at the lifetime value of a customer, right? So sometimes it may cost more to get someone on the front end into Messenger and into SMS, and to be able to send them like text and voicemail drops and things like that. However, then over time, they're going to be worth a lot more to you because they're on this messenger list, because they're on this text list. Right, the open rates on text are 94% still. Right, this is not a new text is not a new platform. SMS is not. It's been around a long time, and they're only just starting to reinvent it with rich text editors. So you're going to have a very similar style Facebook Messenger process in your normal SMS inbox within the next 4 or 5 years. So there's still massive opportunity there that people are not taking advantage of. So like you've got a couple of choices. You can either go, okay, well, I'm just going to do email, and I'm not knocking email. Email it is beneficial, definitely. However, if you just do email alone, you're only going to get maybe 15-20% of people to actually even open the message, let alone click. So might 15% open, 2-3% click. You're like, well, this is a bit depressing. So you might have a list of 1,000 people, 150 open it, then you might get like 10 clicks. Great. That same list on Messenger or SMS, you might have 1,000 people on there. You'll get 800 open it and 50% click. So then you, instead of 10 clicks, you've got like 500. I mean, I know which one I'd rather have.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Well, we're recording this in the time of COVID. Video is huge. Webinars have been huge, but there's also a little bit of fatigue setting in, right? People have been watching a lot of online content. From your perspective and the clients that you work with, are you starting to see that? Did you see sort of a massive spike as people were staying at home and watching more content, and now fatigue is set in and it's dropping, or is it holding pretty steady?
Yeah. So the thing is, the world is changing faster than it's probably ever changed in history. So the great thing about that is, yeah, like you say, that there will be some people who have come online in the last, well, I say come online, but like really got into maybe starting their own business online or something like that 6 months ago, right? Yeah, and there may be a little bit of fatigue starting to set in right now. But here's the thing: there's new people coming every single day, because right now people are going, and it is terrible what's happened. You know, the amount of people have lost jobs, lost family members, lost lives, and on top of that, there is also massive opportunity, and it depends what you want to see, right? I remember the first week that COVID came across the pond, and I started reading these news articles every day, and then by the end of the week, I felt like crap. And my mentor said to me, he said, just get that out of your head. He said, how is that benefiting you in any way? So he was like, this could be the most magical time in history, right? If you take the opportunities. And like, I'm not saying that in a way to like disregard anything that's gone on with people's lives. You know, everyone copes with things in different ways, and there's different situations. However, there's so much magical opportunity right now. It's unbelievable, especially in the online world. So it's great for business.
And it really gives people an opportunity to stand out, right? If you're just doing the same old thing over and over, you shouldn't be surprised if your results are declining, but there's an opportunity to innovate and be different and do something new. And that kind of brings up a topic. It's a little tangential, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on gamification, because there's been a lot of news here in the States about this investing platform called Robinhood, where they're trying to get young investors to invest in the stock market, but there's a big gamification element to the application. Lots of sounds like a slot machine and things like that when you make trades, and confetti and all that kind of stuff. But there's some downside to it as well, because it's pulling in people who really don't know what they're doing, but they're playing it like a game. What do you think of gamification and marketing, and how it can be used effectively?
I love it. So I actually got the opportunity to interview Yukai Chow last year as well. And Yukai Chow, if anyone's listening and don't know who he is, get his book, Actionable Gamification. It is the Bible of gamification. In fact, it's a 12-hour audiobook. So that took some getting through. But so he talks about 8 core principles of gamification. One of them that stands out to me, and what he says a lot as well, it's a lot more than just points, badges, and stickers. Right. One of the things about gamification, epic meaning and calling is massive. Right. So when you feel part of something bigger than you, then so you look, for example, Pokemon Go, right? That went like everyone's forgot about it now, but it went massive for a very short space of time. Why did it do that? Because people felt both an epic meaning and calling around. Yeah, I need to get that to be part of this club, right? It was an exclusive club. If you weren't in the club, you weren't cool. And then they've also got the social currency, where then they've got something to talk about with the other people. You look at the same with sports, right? What's really interesting with sports, I love this phrasing, right? If someone, if their team wins, they say, we won, right?
Yep.
If the team loses, what do they say? They lost.
So true.
So that kind of creating that culture of gamification as well around a sport can also be turned into marketing. So for example, we've done things in the past where we created this challenge process, and each day people would get a certain amount of points for each thing that they clicked through, in terms of, okay, so today's task is this. You're going to do this. Great. You won this amount of points. You do this, you get this amount of points, and so on and so forth. Once they've done that, we said, what happens is then at the end of the 5 days of the challenge, you're going to go into a points leaderboard. And then whoever's at the top is going to get 50 entries to win this massive, it was like $1,000 cash prize and a load of other bonuses. So we actually then leverage that. But here was the thinking behind it. A lot of people will go, well, whoever's got the most points win. But I didn't want to do that, because one of the other things that you want to create with gamification is hope. Right? So even if you only had one entry, and let's say you were 200th in the leaderboard, you still had a chance of winning. Yeah. So you always got to create hope and intrigue with gamification, so people don't feel like if they're not at the top, there's no point, right? And you look at that with video games all the time. You don't start on level 10. They don't make it so hard in that first level that you're just like, oh, I'll give up. Right. Apart from the occasional game that will do it that on purpose to make it, that's their reputation, that this is the hardest game out there. For example, like, I don't know if you ever had it in America, the Impossible Quiz.
It doesn't ring a bell with me.
Yeah, we used to have this when we were at school. There used to be this thing called the Impossible Quiz. It was just like this flash game, right? And the questions was the most stupid thing ever. Made no sense whatsoever, but you just go through it. As soon as you got a question wrong, you have to go right back to the start. Most frustrating thing ever, but you kept doing it. You kept doing it because you wanted to get that bit further. You're like, I know that question now. I know that question now. You just keep going and going and going. So sometimes making something hard actually makes more people want to do it. Sometimes making things easier and then gradually getting harder will make more people get involved with it. And that's what we think about as well when we think about conversational flows, is like, again, micro commitments, right? Start off with a small one and then build up to a bigger commitment.
I think all of this, if you just take it all together, what it really is marketers understanding how people think, how people buy, the actions that people take, as opposed to marketers trying to get everybody to think how they think. And it's really turning the tables a little bit. And that's what's so fascinating, is because there's a lot of research behind this. And it's just so interesting to see the products that are coming out and the way that people are able to optimize what they're doing, because they've started to really understand people's attention spans, what makes people happy, what gets people engaged. It's fascinating stuff. And, this has been a great conversation. Paul, how do people find out more about what you're doing at Amplify?
Yeah, so if you go to www.amplifyc-com.com, and there will be some great resources on there as well, depending when you go. We're always updating that stuff, but right now there is I think 27 webinar hacks on there. It'll either be that or 27 ways to get people to say hell yes. on your webinar. So all those things we're talking about, micro commitments. There's 27 different ways that I've scripted out for you, so you can really easily get people to say yes on your webinar. And you can get that on there and actually go through a C-COM experience and see how it feels and how it looks.
That's great. I'll definitely have that linked up in the show notes so that people can find it. And what about you? Are you on the social media channels? How can people track you down?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook a lot. To be honest, because hence being on Messenger and stuff. So yeah, just search for Paul Ace on there, or search Amplify C-COM, and either connect with me personally. Ideally as well. Here's the thing: if you want to get someone's attention on social media, send them a video message, right?
So
Because a lot of people are scared to send video messages. My first outreach is usually a video message followed up with a "let me know." Because then I create a curiosity loop for the person to go, well, I've got to watch the video now because I don't know what he wants to know.
It's so true. We did that a lot with sales, where we embedded video messages in our sales outreach, and it made such a difference. People will click on those videos.
It's
Paul,
personal.
Yeah, it's personal. That's right. And it shows who you are. It's great. It's great. Paul, this has been a fascinating conversation. I've really enjoyed our discussion today, and some really interesting things happening. So I encourage our audience to go check you out. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks very much, Eric. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks.